Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Crown Yourself podcast. I am so honored to have here with us today Dr. Mark Matthews. Now, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that we love to dive into the mindset, into self-worth, into understanding the questions that we ask ourselves. And one of the things that I love about just what Dr. Mark just brings to the table is such a deep level of introspection, awareness, and science to the process. I think that you're going to love how he thinks about solving problems and solving the challenges that we face when we look in the mirror with our own self-worth, with our own self-criticism, with the hypercritical nature that sometimes can be an asset in business and life and high performance, but it also can be our double-edged sword. With that, Dr. Mark Matthews, welcome to the Crown Yourself podcast. I know this has been a long time coming.
Yeah, I just want to say, hey, everybody. Look, I'm super glad to be here. I'm super excited to be here with you. And as always, I really loved when we were talking about this podcast, you told me, how do we make this the best podcast that we've ever had? Well, I'm here to bring that. I believe together, me, you, and everybody listening here, for some people, this is going to be the most important thing that they've heard, maybe this year, maybe in their life. And that's my commitment as we stand here today, is to trust that something like that will come, not just because we're amazing and beautiful, but because we can tap into that. So that's my intention today. Let's make this something that is honest, real, and really serves everyone who's involved.
Amen. So I want to dive in to start with your story because you lost your parents when you were 9 years old, quite tragically and suddenly. And your eldest brother also has had a life battle with cerebral palsy, and he was told he wasn't going to live. And yet now he is, almost celebrating his 40th birthday. You have been at this precipice of grief. And what did grief teach you about identity, and how has it shaped and shaped the you do today?
I love that question. And I think if you can answer that question well, there's nothing that can break you in life. I really believe that. So my history, it starts early with grief, and it's a lot of grief that continues. And I'll tell you what my favorite thing about grief is. It can be the great opener. If you grieve well, this is what I learned at a very young age, and it's how it shaped everything that I've done. I was so young when I watched my mom go, and there was two benefits to that scenario for me. One was she was the most important woman in my life by far. She was everything to me. I was a full mama's boy. Literally everywhere she went, I was holding on to her. If you took me out somewhere, I was actually very shy and I'd be hiding behind her. And I loved my mom. I can shut my eyes and I can remember laying on her lap in church, hiding behind her with the babysitter for the first time, like riding in the car with her and singing Tom Petty, Free Fallin'. My first cassette that I was ever given as a kid, my first and only cassette, because I was working on the shift of CDs, right? And it's like, I've had this, first of all, to grieve, like really get the benefit of grief and the lessons that come from it. You have to be in a deep relationship. You have to be truly connected. You have to be at a place where when you lose somebody, it actually feels like you lost a part of yourself. And for a young boy losing his mom, that's exactly what it feels like. And so your whole world is, some people would say, shattered. I think the most accurate way to say it is your whole world is opened up. Everything you think you believe about the world all of a sudden starts to become into question. All of a sudden, the beliefs that get passed down to you from the environment that you're in, you start to recognize that they don't have a good answer for what happens here. And so you keep questioning. Well, so it births this level of curiosity, a commitment to the truth. And so for me, what it did is it shaped my work to say, no matter what we do, we have to be committed to the truth and obsessed with the realization that we don't know what that is. The truth is dynamic. And so just like grief, it changes over time. The truth is dynamic. And so you got to find what you believe is going to stay true. But you got to be excited about what's going to change. And so the way it shaped my life is recognizing that the only thing that will actually ruin your life when it comes to grief is avoidance. It's like Brene Brown's been saying lately, it's not our fear that holds us back. It's the armor that we put on to protect ourselves when we're afraid. That is usually the thing that really holds us back because it keeps us from connecting. So I'm very grateful because the lens that I've had is care. And that means caring about the outcomes. That means that I care about you. There's no like, I care about you if and only if these conditions. I dare to care even when it's going to be painful. And that's the lesson I learned. Unfortunately, most of us in our life, whatever we've grieved, a person, loss, miss in our life, we have used avoidance and used that as a warning not to care or not to invest. And for the things that matter most, you need to do the exact opposite. You need to be willing to feel the pain of caring and losing, and that will actually set you free.
I can speak to that exactly. And I love how you frame that around the power of care because it is that armoring of avoidance. It's so easy to feel and to guard yourself up when you've experienced loss. Like I lost 3 family members and 2 friends within 1 year in 2021. And it threw me for an identity spiral, quite frankly, for 2 years. But one of them was my dad. And there's something really significant that happens when you lose. Like, I love that you touched on the belief systems that shape you because I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who does sex therapy for men. And he was like, do you think you'd write and be as vocal as you are and be as creative and speak in the way that you do if you hadn't lost your father? And I was like, yes, my losing my parent actually allowed me to unlock another level of my identity that was still hidden in like the identity of being a daughter to my dad, which was a very complex relationship in of itself. But that the power that we have to strip away and to lean into that care. When I started doing that instead of avoiding the depth of feeling and really feeling all of it, that's when there's a level that gets unlocked that one of our guests before, Jan Joy Hoth, she called it the deep end of joy. And like, in order to fully experience the depth, exuberance of joy, there's a level of depth that has to be there that like it gets grounded in.
I'm 100% with that. And I think what's so cool about that is that it also speaks to human motivation. Humans are motivated by incentives to
Mhm.
gain what they really want to experience in life, but also to avoid what they never want to experience. And I actually like to speak to that broadly. If you look across your world, I think the best thing you can do, if you want to think well, is figure out how to have the appropriate framing of what you're
Mm,
looking at, and then go to first principles and break up the different constituent parts and look at each one. But until you have the right frame, you don't know what you're breaking up. I love what you're saying this. When it comes to grief, the cool thing is it starts to break up your worldview, but then you need a frame to put that in that
mhm,
starts to give you a coherence to your life. And the best frame that you can think of in your life is just to take things, in coaching. I see people radically change their life when they identify a couple things. What do they really want? What do they absolutely not want? And then who do they need to become in order to be able to live in the dance between those two things? And the number one thing that holds most of my clients back that I've noticed is most of it is there's someone who can't look at what they don't want and be honest about how it might happen if they don't change their behavior. They can't leverage the feeling of cost. They can't leverage the pain. They can't look into the future and say, if I don't post on social media, if I don't figure out a marketing system, if I don't figure out how to go out and talk to the people that I care about, for the parents out there, if I don't figure out how to have family values that my family starts to come together on and actually make sure it's not only taught and spoken to my children, but that it becomes alive within them. If I
mhm.
don't do those things, here's the 1, 2, 3 costs that are coming. And I will say that right there, it is a dark world where people don't look to the future and anticipate the costs. And that's probably the number one constraint I see for people. Then, if they do that, and they haven't defined what they want, now they get lost there. And so when you speak to grief is first thing you need is a good frame for how to do it well. And that's for
Mm.
everything that you do. The first thing you do is figure out what's the frame to do it well and not fall into adopting the worldview, not staying stuck in how it feels and assuming that that's what it's supposed to be like. Cause you don't know. You actually don't know what it could be like.
Yeah. What's your favorite question to ask to kind of like unlock that framing?
I think when people are trapped with their framing, I immediately start to ask them questions about someone else. So my favorite thing to do for anybody who's out there who's a coach, consultant, or a leader, what I do, or a parent even, I think it's really good. Take a situation where get it outside of them and use a story and ask them what you would do. If you can use your own life, it's actually really helpful because now you've got vulnerability. You say, hey, when I teach college students, I walk in and I say, I got a problem. What? And I'll tell everybody. It perks them up right away. You say, I got a problem. Like, what? Is it cool if I share it with you? And I'll share a real life problem that I have. We learn how to do this properly. Obviously, we don't tell them all the details of someone else's life, but we share
Yeah.
context, they can help us. So I'll share it. Like dating. When I was dating, I would just put it up for my college students, right? It's like, I went on a date last night and I would give the context. I'd be like, here's the date, right? And how many of you would agree that we all want love, right? And they would all raise their hand. We all want love. And how many of you also can identify, like with me, I'm not alone here. Dating's so hard, right? And there's so many people who are, they'll raise their hand. So the first thing I'd say is, what's the best question I can do is how would you help me with this problem? How would you help insert someone they care about? My students tend to care about me, or someone else that they care about. If they're really compassionate, you get to pick people that they're not even thinking about. And it's really cool. And you've got someone who's really compassionate and really connected to the world when you can pick a stranger and they want to help. And if they can't do that, you just learn something about your client. They're not there yet. But how
Mm-hmm.
can you help so and so with this problem? And then give them the problem that requires them to build the frame that would serve them. And it's amazing how fast it will work. And then they already worked it out, so they feel confident and capable. And now you don't even have to ask them to apply it 90% of the time. They'll automatically start applying it in their life, and they'll say, you know what? And as soon as they snap into solving their own problem, I just let mine go. And then usually they haven't solved my problem. And then I get to the end, I joke and I say, well, you solved your problems, not mine. And it's fun. It's funny. And then they feel amazing. And then at the end, they might even try to help you solve mine. And we feel more connected. It's open. But that's the first trap. And early stage coaches, consultants, or even I would argue therapists. I don't want to get too
Mm-hmm.
much into the controversy there, but early stage, they go right at the person through direct self awareness. No, man, you need to give them a problem they can solve in a different context and then let them come back. And same for grief. Same for grief. If you had a child who went through this, how would you like them to be able to contend with this? And they won't let their child be miserable through life. That's not an option. So then they'll start to figure it out and build the frame.
I love that. I'm gonna try doing that with my son for grief, because I did it with discipline. I actually, because normally my schedule, I'll get admin work or review what my team's doing at night after my kids go to sleep, and that's like there's a good 2 hour window that I can squeeze in of quiet. And I was telling my son as I was putting him down, and I was like, he has to go to work, mommy, and but I don't want to. And I started like kind of like how he was doing earlier with schoolwork, and he was like, Mom, you just have to do it. Like, you just have to sit down and do it. It probably won't take as long as you think. And I was like, oh, really? Is that your advice to me? Yeah, you should go do it. And I was like, oh, okay. The next day, no problem with schoolwork.
I love that. And also, I love how you have the vulnerability. Like, I'd be curious what your philosophy is as a parent, but very commonly, one of the challenges I see is that parents don't want to share a real vulnerability because they don't want their children to stress about it.
Hmm.
But what they don't realize is that their children are not only stressing about, they know their parents stress, they also have no way to help. And okay, if you want to hack for relationships, this is life changing. Ask my soon to be fiance. By the time this airs, hopefully she's
Yep.
it's there, but she knows it's coming. But ask her, if someone comes to you and says, is there anything I can do to help? This is a life hack if you want better relationships. And it's changed my life because it changed how I see the world. Most people who struggle a lot, they have this false belief, fallen into the illusion that nobody can actually help them. So I need to
Mhm.
do it myself. It's a big problem, and it destroys relationships because then someone says, how can I help? And they say, I just need to focus. I just need it, right? Always have a simple go-to answer for whoever comes to help. Challenge yourself, anything, and make it very simple. So before I came to this podcast, I had lunch with my love, and we're sitting there and we're talking and we're very excited because we believe in the ripple effect. We believe somebody's still listening to this right now. You're in the middle of this random podcast, or maybe it's your favorite podcast, and you're like, this could go somewhere, right? Maybe this is going to make a difference in my life. Well, stay with us. Like it could. And we're talking about that because we know it's true because it's happened to us. But then I'm walking up to, just get ready and be present. And she says, hey, is there anything I could do to help? I turn around wide eyed and I just look at her. And I say it in a goofy voice. I use goofy voice. We use them all the time. I'm playful. And I was like, kiss, right? Kiss.
Hey, love. I see that you're back. Mama's on a recording. You want to say hi, girlfriend? And then you go take a nap. You say hi, buddy. Say hi. Hi, Dr. Mark.
Hi, thank you. It's so nice to see you. I love your shirt.
Yeah. Hey, buddy. No touching that. You full? Go up and take a nap. Don't mind. You don't want to know? Okay, you can go up to the playroom. I know you have adventure club tonight. Did you have lunch? Can we have a tea party after I'm done? Yeah. Can you look at the clock? I'll be done at 2:15. And then can we have a tea party before you go? Okay.
One of my early first clients, I made a mistake with them. Is it okay if I just go here?
Yeah.
For those of you who are listening, this is a quick pivot because we had a beautiful awareness about what matters. I like that idea. Always have something to help. Bridget, she immediately gives me a kiss and she helps me. We always have that. But also, here's a piece of advice. Never get so stuck in what you're doing that you miss the moment. When your son just walked in here in this middle of this podcast, I enjoyed that. I'll never forget. It was outside of a Brendan Burchard event and I was with a client and I was trying to help him. And we were working through something. We'd been working together for over a year and I was pushing them hard. I was challenging them hard. I was like putting the mirror up at a level that was insane, like pictures on a napkin level stuff. And I was earlier in my coaching career and I really made the mistake because I wasn't checking in enough with them. And I took a client who, for over a year saw me as their number one cheerleader and the best person in their life. And I pushed them too hard in that moment. But there's something that I noticed. About halfway through that moment, a little kid peeked over the other booth and he tried to like mess with me. And I turned around and I met that kid with incredible presence. And I just let him tell me what he was trying to say. He wanted to come over, he wanted to hang out. And I took 2 minutes of our time to have that kid, just meet him with presence and get curious. And he jumps over the thing. He's sitting with me, and his mom's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." Right. And I'm sitting there, and this little guy's here. And I said, "Welcome to the table. We're working on improving ourselves. What do you got?" And he starts coming up with little things. And we're like, "Thank you." And then when he gets ready to go, right, the parent wants to punish the child. You don't do that. You don't jump in and get in other people's business. You don't do that. And I can see why. I think there's
Mm-hmm.
reasonable parenting philosophies, why that's very good. And I also want to thank that child for their presence,
Mm-hmm.
for their curiosity, for their willingness to help. They don't know that yet. But here's the thing that shocked me. My client at the time and in that moment, I asked them, I said, "Wasn't that amazing?" But it wasn't amazing to my client. And that's when I realized something very powerful there. When our needs aren't met and we don't feel secure, we're usually divorced from the magic around us. That is the reason I'm grateful for the work you do, the work I do, the work we're all doing if we're on this podcast, is that we won't be divorced from those moments. I won't be
Yeah.
divorced of, I just started this podcast with us talking about me missing my mom. I just got to see a young boy who gets to run to his.
It's truly an honor being a parent. And I think there's a reverence that I think that you beautifully bring to life. And I think that that's something when you have experienced death at either an early age or in a shock, there's a reverence that, tomorrow's not guaranteed. And it's cliche to say, but when you can bring that beautiful reverence to life and to the work that you do and to holding space and like also recognizing, yeah, there's professional boundaries, but at the same time, it's like, I think the beautiful thing that I think COVID did for humanity and the workforce is like making people realize like, it's not work-life balance because I don't wanna take away work, my purpose work, for the sake of balancing out my kid because one would have to take and one would have to give, versus there's an integration and a harmony that happens, and working with people who understand that harmonics and that sometimes, yes, my kid's gonna come in and I can set him up with a boundary. Like there's only 2 sessions that I will make sure that like I have all hands on deck for for when I'm going through doing hypnosis or timeline therapy with my clients. Like my husband and my mom know like that is sacred. We cannot interrupt during that time, but otherwise we're working on boundaries, but it's allowing for that flow. All he needed was a quick touch point and then recognizing that there's that next space. And I think that where people get overwhelmed is in the stories of capacity, in the stories of the shoulds. And I know you really work with a lot of high achievers in those stories of overwhelm, because sometimes when you're in that space where you're not feeling safe, the nervous system literally does feel overwhelmed. And how how do you navigate that shift? What are the questions that you can even ask to see, is this a story of overwhelm or am I actually facing like some environmental pushback or some boundaries maybe need to be put in place? Or how do I discern when my capacity is expanding or when it's reached that point that like the rubber band is about to break?
I love that because in reality, capacity conversation is probably the most important conversation about for anybody listening to this podcast who, from what I understand, most people here, they're growing a business or they're growing an empire, right? And they are a sovereign ruler of their life, of their family, of their business. You're literally in the business of expanding capacity of others. If you're in business and everything you do, if you're a business owner, I highly recommend thinking about this. If your service or your product expands the capacity of your consumer or your client, that right there is where you need to communicate your value. If they see you and they say, I now have more capacity, even just your presence gives me capacity. They walk out of hypnosis. I feel like I have more capacity. If they feel like they have more capacity, they'll take behaviors that are consistent with that and see that they do. If you expand capacity, you are amazing. If you reduce capacity, think of a teacher who gives you homework that you don't see the value in, and it takes you away from the moments that matter. That, if you do that, you reduce capacity, you are a distraction. Tony Robbins, I love it. He always says people are either an example or a warning. He's like, your life is an example or a warning. And he says that not because he wants it to be that way, because in that moment, it's true. People are either adding to your capacity or they're distracting you. And I like that better than we often talk about they're either giving you energy or taking energy, because then that can lead you to judging people pretty harshly. Sometimes they're distracting, but they're just confusing. Sometimes the energy takers, you just don't understand their context. And they don't understand yours. But here's a good way to think. What has to be true here to expand capacity for this person to do that or this product to do that? And if you only make decisions, does it expand my capacity or does it distract me? That will force you to put your life in context so you can figure out whether it matters. I really think it's helpful. And you having presence with your child, having flow with your child, for me, expands my capacity because I understand that I want to be a parent. I want a secure attachment with my child. I want to make sure that their nervous system is really well regulated and that their nervous system is regulated with mine. So I want to have grace and presence and flow between the different things that we do. And so one of the things I think is amazing is how do you discern it? You absolutely do have to have a goal, but you actually, I think one way to think about it is you have to know how you want to be in the way you pursue your goals, how you want to
Right.
model goal pursuit. This is like literally when people talk about like, it's not just what you achieve, it's how you achieve it. This is a question that if you don't answer this, I had a student who came to me in class. I mean, he's now a client, which is always wild. I was teaching at Ohio State University psychology class. He met me on campus. He didn't need the class. He says, I want to come take your class. Comes to my class. That's what he says, I want to hire you as my high performance coach. And this is a college student looking this way. I'm like, wow, that's rare because in
Amazing.
college, yeah, they're not thinking like that. I wish I was earlier on. He was. And we've been working together for a long time. But in class, he said to me something that was amazing. He said, I focus on achievement. I focus on how do I make X, Y, or Z? How do I accomplish my goals? And I never even realized that I was sacrificing fulfillment to get that achievement. He's like, you're the first person who made me aware that I can aim for achievement, but in a way that's fulfilling. And he said, so I made a commitment today that I am going to achieve my dreams. I am going to be an incredible leader, a world-class influence in the world. And I'm going to do it in fulfilling fashion. And that's important because that actually means you have to expand your capacity to figure out how to do that. But once you do, you're actually going to think about it this way. You're going to expand the capacity of everyone around you because positive emotion expands capacity. Fulfillment
Mhm.
expands capacity. Long story short, I would just say this. In the capacity question, every time you come up to an edge where you're wondering if you're out of capacity, just make sure the way you resolve that is by saying, do I know what I really want? And if you're unclear on that, that's where you got to be really careful because you're going to land on questions like, I'm just out of capacity. And then you're just going to go to distractions. If you resolve your capacity problem with distractions, they don't move you towards your long term goals, you are actively destroying your capacity. This is where a good coach will help you see this. That is a seriously negative ROI. That's how you bankrupt your capacity right there. So, am I at my edge? What do I really want? I don't know. Before you answer the capacity question, make sure you know what it is. Just
fulfillment being tied to fulfillment and capacity. I've never heard anyone explain it like that. And the more I'm reflecting just on what you said, I just was speaking at Texas Lutheran University to a group of sorority girls. And like, I'm 38, like college. I mean, I didn't go to college, but I attended college, but without attending college. But I remember that time and that season around being age 19, 20. I had started my first business. I was freelancing as a Pilates instructor. I was also writing screenplays. I was interning at production houses and things like that. And I was telling myself a story of capacity. And it was so funny because I looked at these girls as I'm like, I said, who's stressed? And I was just speaking on stress and mental health. And I'm like, girls, like you have like no idea what stress is and like what capacity you are capable of. Because I said, I guarantee you the future version of you is probably doing more. And it was actually Brendan who brought that awareness to my attention when he shared, I think it was in a high performance coaching class back when it was live, about how when he was being mentored by Tony Robbins, he got in a limo with, and Tony laughed and he was like, you think you're busy now? Like, and it's that capacity that it comes because I'm looking at how do I run two businesses with three young children, all under the age of 10? And that comes from the deep levels, deep seated purpose that I know that motherhood for me was always intimately tied with the vision. It was not kids or business. It was like, I know I am meant to do both simultaneously and show that integration to my kids. And now that I have a daughter, it's even more almost like a personal responsibility that just is like in my soul because it's so fulfilling being a mother and the business is so fulfilling. There has to be that dance, but it has tested and expanded my capacity. And that is literally the mantra that I have been saying for the past year, Mark. I have been saying I am expanding my capacity to hold more.
Oh my gosh, I love this. And you just spawn like my favorite thing is when I'm with somebody and it really gets me to think about some things I haven't thought about yet. And one that I realized I'm always obsessed with finding the patterns people haven't decoded yet, just like Tony Robbins. Like, find that pattern they haven't decoded. Here's a good one that I realized. So, one of my favorite models of the hierarchy of needs, right? Kind of you go back to Maslow. And Maslow is one of my favorite mentors. I call them the great mentors in psychology. If you didn't read them, if you studied psychology and you don't understand Maslow and Freud and Jung, and I mean, if you really get into them, William James, and I mean, if you get into the Gestalts, Max Wertheimer, like these people, my call to you is you're really missing most of the actual thought behind modern psychology. Modern psychology today, unfortunately, is actually people just testing these complex theories, these integrative theories that a lot of people built up. And there's plenty of people, for example, Lisa Feldman Barrett, who's creating real new theory and they're really pushing the envelope and really trying to discover something new. But I've spent over a decade in the academic world watching as people just incrementally test the things that, to be honest with you, a lot of it's true. It's true in evidence. I'm not saying it's a bad thing with you. I'm just saying you're missing a piece of the education if you just do the modern stuff. And I'll tell you what's crazy. A lot of times, a good example is business, right? How many of your listeners here or people in your community run a business that they produce an offer? Is that a lot of people in the audience?
Pretty much everyone.
Offer. Okay. Awesome. Okay. So if you want to crush it at business, and you tell me if you
Mhm.
agree or disagree, but I get excited about this. The basic level needs are related to security, right? And
Mhm.
so that's literally you have a home, you have connection, right? You have home, food, you have stable connection in your life. So be curious, entrepreneurs. One of my favorite questions when I'm talking about influence and recognize that listening and learning about other people is the first step. Be curious if all your friends are entrepreneurs and business owners.
Oh,
Be
pretty much.
curious if, right? If they are, I always look at this. Be curious if they're all in one age group. Be curious, right? This is really important because if your demographic is small, that means that your connection needs are really tied to that domain. And the most connected people, the people who have that need met like incredible is they've figured out how to be deeply connected to all of humanity. It secures the
Mhm.
need. It's really powerful. But I always tell them because if you're stuck and it's all business owners, your brain is adapting to meet your needs in one context of life. There's a risk there for that need. And it's important because what I see a lot of people do is that third kind of security need before you get into growth. It really is self-esteem.
Mm,
And that need what it is it's a combination of two things. It's mastery of your environment, self-efficacy, and then mastery. It's actually safety in relationships. That you feel like you have a stable place in the world, that you're worthy of relationship. That's why, right? The top two core fears people tend to have is I'm not good enough. I'm not enough. Maybe I can't master the environment. I'm not
mhm,
worthy, right? That's why it's in the security need. But here's the thing, you're going to love this. And you tell me if it's true, because I've never thought about it till this moment. Most people, if you get past security, you go to growth needs. And that
mhm,
first growth need is exploration. It's the desire to explore. That's huge. However, if the security needs aren't met, the self-esteem needs aren't met, you're probably not exploring when you create a new offer. When you're redoing your business, you're probably not genuinely exploring, especially for your clients. You're probably trying to find an area that you feel like you have a hold over. And so you're
mhm,
jumping to find that area that you have a hold over. Now, if you have an offer that's converting and you figured out that first one is good, maybe that makes sense. But you might just genuinely be trying to find the place where you feel like you have mastery. And
mhm.
that is not the place to meet that need. It's going to destroy you in business. It's very bad.
Explain more.
Yeah. So what happens is, for example, my own business, I
Mhm,
really grateful because I heard this advice from like Alex Hermosi and Tony Robbins and these people and Brandon Burchard. It said, when you start out as a coach, master the art of one-on-one coaching.
mm,
Master the art of being able to take somebody and work them through a coaching process. That's how you get so good at it. So I watch all my peers around me get excited to start a business, get excited to go make it, and then wait 6 months to a year to ever have a one-on-one strategy session to work with someone. Now they might have had the idea, but the truth is they were looking for something that they were certain that they had mastery of, where they really had the value. They wanted to be in the group of high performance coaches. They needed that more than actually getting out there and exploring how to serve the clients. I did the exact opposite because my security didn't come from being a high performance coach. My security in my life is met. My self esteem needs are met through a belief system that honors the worth and value of all of us, and the recognition that mastery comes from progressively engaging with my environment and trusting that I can figure things out. It's a process. So I go out and I build a one-on-one coaching business, and I have incredible success in graduate school. And I'm getting clients that are ages 16 to 77. My demographics are everybody. When people say I need a niche where I can work with people, what they're really saying is a lot of time, not all the time, saying I only want to work with people I feel comfortable with.
uh-huh.
I'm like, I'll coach anybody anywhere every time because I have an amazing coaching process. And if somebody's hungry, that's what my mentors have taught me. Go coach who needs and wants coach. And as I've done it, I've got clients that have been with me since the beginning. They're still there, been with me for years. And I've built this business and I've stuck with one offer. And I keep keeping myself from trying to create this big thing. And I keep falling in love with that one offer and exploring those connected, empowering sessions. So through my week, I've got 15 sessions every week where I'm pouring into people and I'm developing the skill and I'm mastering it. But the thing is I'm never questioning whether I should be there. I'm never questioning my worth. I'm never looking for that because that's secure. I'm in love with the game. I'm in love with the process. It's not
Mhm.
there to meet my need of self-esteem. It's there to meet my need of exploration and growth. And that's critical if you want to be in a business like the kinds of stuff we do.
Any business, because when your identity is tied to the profit or success or failure or revenue of your business, and this is quite frankly for any goal too. Like I remember when I was bulimic, I had 10 years between 11 and 22. And in my healing years, it was when I didn't disassociate from the goal. The goal shifted from being a numerical goal to being a goal of how much can I love falling in love with my body. Same with business, same with making money in business. How much can I love serving my clients? How much can I love the joy of the sale that actually creates transformation from that transaction? It's a very different intention and mindset when you're not searching for your self-worth through some form of external numerical value, whether it's the number on a scale, the number, the number of years you've been in a relationship, the number of dollars in your bank account, but you actually source that self-worth from within, from the love of the mastery of the thing that you are really working at getting good at.
I love this, and I really think what you just shared, especially in your journey, 10 years of trying to have this external goal to fill an internal need. I love this. You're never going to win the internal game with something external. You
Never.
never will. But I like this. One thing I really learned about is what we do out there, right? It's like our performance, our achievement, those things, they matter so much. But if you study consulting, the great consultant like of the last century was Peter Drucker. And Peter
Hmm.
Drucker was a genius because he realized one key thing is that the organization exists, the organism exists, I would argue, not for what it can bring to its own organization, to its own self. It exists for what it can produce outside of itself. That is what we're here to be creators. And those are
Hmm.
outside of yourself. But if you're creating to fill something internally, Peter Drucker said that when the organization prioritizes the organization's outcomes over the external, the people that they serve, it will inevitably implode. And that's what happens to most organizations and people because they were built on a rocky foundation. So here's what I say. Self-esteem is a need. It's a fundamental human need. It's a need to feel like you can gain mastery over the world around you and that you're a respectable person that people can relate to. So if you want to secure your self-esteem needs, here's the play. Take anything that you are even reasonably good at or even think you could get good at and just notice how you get better. Growth mindset. Notice how you get better because it is true that every human being wants to have the capacity to serve people around them. That's part of the need. So
Hmm.
whatever you can get better at, that growth mindset is a great way to build the mastery side. Decide if you're always asking, am I, able to do this? Can I do it? That's the question you got to answer. If you're asking, am I worthy? Am I going to be loved?
Hmm.
This is where the best thing you can do is reject the advice of common advice of love yourself and upgrade that advice to love us. Start finding as many relationships as you can where you really love and you have compassion towards and you care for us, not just the other person, not just yourself. This is about 10 years ago, there was a lot of we focus in the leadership
Hmm.
world, and that was good. We focus. So if you're trying to secure that need, look for every area where you can create us, not just you, not just them, right? Us. And the more you can cultivate feelings of a positive us, even just intentions where you know deep in your soul, I'm here to create a positive relationship, that will start to meet that need. But if you start asking, how do I feel secure? How do I get my needs met? How do I get love? You are literally knocking on the door of narcissistic personality. You're asking to develop it. And I think that's maybe my hot take, but my undergraduate research advisor is probably I'd argue the second world's leading expert in narcissistic personality. And
Hmm.
from everything I learned was when the organism turns towards the obsession with itself, the preoccupation with itself, that frame will lead you into much more weakness. Unfortunately, you got a lot of people out there who are trying to do that. They're trying to meet that need and they're telling you the wrong what, and they don't even know. I think they're great hearted people and it sounds like it makes sense, but prioritize us, not yourself, not others, us. And now you got to be creative enough to be able to have a relationship, which is where your needs will be met.
Oh, I think that that's so true. And it just keeps on bringing up what I've seen, especially in the female entrepreneur world. Look, I get the generational concept. Women have only been able to make money for like the past 200 years in the in the Western world. So I understand like women tend to have some more financial baggage. Let's just say that comes with the territory. But in the female coaching world and in the coaching world in general, there's been this like obsession with like numbers and sharing your numbers and things like that. And there was a time 5 years ago that I started modeling them. And I started recognizing that I wasn't loving the results or the clients that were even coming to me through that marketing message because what it was doing, it was attaching what needed to be was an identity shift to some external metric. And I looked because success leaves clues. I looked at my past history with my first successful business as a Pilates instructor. And I said, well, how did I grow to be the fastest, like most highest paid, youngest, most fully booked instructor at the studio that I was freelancing at for within a year? How did I do that? And I said, I never once mentioned my weight. I never mentioned the number of how much I weighed or how much weight I had lost from Pilates. Never. It was always about the feeling. And it was about the feeling that Pilates gave to me that I got to source through that and serve through that. And I think that when we realize that anytime we're putting any sort of goal outside of ourselves, monetary, fitness, anything. Literally, you end up creating the organism that eats itself because you're eroding those. You become a succubus of your own self.
I think every true self esteem expert would agree with that. And I think what's really interesting about how you pulled that off and what I love about it is, the love of my life, Bridget, she just became a certified high performance coach. She just committed to mastering a process so that she could coach other people. She didn't do it because she's like, we could make money doing this. Of course, we could make money doing that. When you help people, you can do that. We both can do it in business. That's great. The reason she was interested in doing it was because she said, I want to develop this skill. She's like, I watch how you, in every conversation you have with your family, with my family, with everyone around you, by developing the skill of coaching, you are able to be just a better person for them. It's like you're focused on them. You care about listening to them. It's like who I've become through coaching. She's like, I want more of that. I want to master the skill. Someday we talk about kids. She's like, I want to have this for my kids. I want to have this skill. And when that was her intention going in, it was amazing. But if your goal was, a lot of people, if they have a goal, it's really important, but they gotta watch out for what you just said of tying their self-worth. And you know why people do it? One reason, it gives you a false sense of confidence at the beginning.
It's that little egoic hit and the hard part is that you can't sustain that because then you get hit with the reality of actually building a business around it and the skill set because where I see a lot of people struggle is they have a skill set in the delivery of a service. But there's like 25 other hats that you have to wear as a business owner with between finances, marketing, sales, delivery, operations, admin. Like there's 25 other hats that you're taking on. And those are not necessarily skill sets that are also mastered through the delivery of the service that you're providing. And when we conflate our identity of the success of the business to the ability to deliver a quality service to then our own self-esteem and our identity, we've got this huge conflation of a whole bunch of other different identities and skill sets that necessarily, like some of them have not been built up. One of my favorite interviews that I did on the Communication Queen podcast was with a really successful coach. She's done wonderful. And she admitted, she said, I'm a great coach. I'm a terrible marketer. I said, great. That is self-awareness that allows you to see like marketing is a skill set, sales is a skill set, everything is a skill set. But when you encompass everything into this identity of a number, of a goal, of a revenue number with business, you're going to erode your self-worth. And it's not it's just because you aren't skilled in these other areas and you just have to skill up.
I love this. And you know what? It reminds me, it keeps coming back. If you're listening to this and you're like, what in the heck? These guys, they're going crazy. This wow, preach. Or you're like, I'm a little confused, right? Here's something really important and actionable. One of the things I love is we're talking a lot about this linking of self-worth to something, outside of you, an achievement or the goal to achieve or your business or a skill. And there's dangers to that. But let's be very clear. You still need to build a positive, stable sense of self. You need to build a belief within you that yes, you're worthy. Yes, you matter. Yes, you have the ability to build skills. And even if you didn't, my brother has severe cerebral palsy. His cognitive capacity is maybe at 3 years old, and he's been that way for 40 years of his life. He can't talk to you in intelligible language. He can't do any of those things. Is he now unworthy? That's my favorite thing to do, right? Like, well, and that is like, is he unworthy now? And if you want people to internalize this, most people would be like, no. Some people would be like, yeah, you can't contribute to society. There's a whole bunch of people who
That's
see
a
that way,
whole
right?
controversy in and of itself.
Yeah, but if you realize, oh my gosh, well, what's his smile worth? What's
Yeah.
that goofy laugh, that you get to experience with him worth? What's his presence worth? And I think this is where, if you want a great life hack, if you just want to be happy, learn to delight in learning about and accepting other people. I have a mission, a personal goal, set goals that help me become who I want to become. One of my goals is to love and like every single human being on this earth. Every single one. And you'd say, Mark, that's insane. What about? And you'll insert the worst person you can think of, right? That's the first thing you think about. What about so and so? And then I'll say, well, why shouldn't I love and like them? And their response to that would be, because they did X. And then I realized, oh, we just have a different framework for how we interact with humans. We see humans and their behavior. You must see human and their behavior as the same thing. I see the person and I love that person just like I would a baby, just like I do my brother. And I see them as having worth and value. I see even the plants as having worth and value. Now, that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that their behavior or anything I condone. And they're like, well, if you love and like them, how could you like someone that does something terrible? I'm like, because you know what? If one person liked them, they might get to have a conversation with them and switch them. They might be able to help them see the world a different way. So liking something just means that you've made an acceptance of it and you can find something positive about it. And if you can't do that, I've traveled the entire country and stayed in 125 local homes just to get to know people in America. Sat down with people from so many different countries, from every political view you can think of, people with families, ate with their kids at the dinner table. If you can't yet find something you like about other people and see a potential vision, a path forward where you could be friends with that person, you just haven't tapped into the power of your human development. There's another level there for you. And to be fair, you're not being encouraged to. The studies show people aren't incentivized to develop at that level. But I'll bring it back to Maslow. Maslow devoted his life to understanding human development because in 1935, when all of the great psychologists were fleeing Germany and coming to New York, he looked around and he had this vision of a peace table. It was Hitler. It was Stalin. It was all the world leaders sitting down at a peace table and finding a way forward. And he believed that was possible. I, like Maslow, believe that's possible. But I know the second I divide myself from another human being, I have cut off the possibility. So I have to love and like everyone if I want world peace. I want world peace. Dang it. I'm here to say it's possible. We can make it happen. And if that offends you, I would just say this, Shiz, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't want to hurt you. I actually care about how you feel and I care about what you think. And I think we could find a way. I really think I could, that we could find peace together and we could have a little bit more unity and peace throughout the world. I don't know if it's where we expect to go today, but I'm loving
I love it too. I mean, you're talking to a former pageant girl, so world peace all the way.
it.
And I truly believe in that. I had the pleasure of coaching a client years and years ago. Most of his family perished in the Holocaust, and he turned to me, and I forget the context of what was said, but I remember clear as day what was said. And he said, "Kim, you could change the world with a smile." And it hit me. I was like, "Well, gosh, what if someone had smiled at Hitler a few more times, like, and just said, 'How's your day going, man?'" Like rather
Yeah,
than derision and division. And I think that, yes, in society, there's a lot of conditioning for whatever belief system that you choose to believe that does create and cultivate division. And the studies aren't lying that like feel so divided and so separated. And I think that can happen when there's I believe it's a Taoist proverb that's like, there's division within ourselves. And I think it comes from healing that connection between our conscious and our unconscious mind and the relationship that we have together. Do we keep our commitments? Do we have a trusting, loving relationship that if we say we're going to go for something that we actually do that? Do we back ourselves? Do we trust ourselves? Because the division that's missing, the division that we see in the world, it starts with us. It starts internally.
love that. And I think I'm really glad you brought up Taoism because, man, I remember Shard, he kept talking about Wayne Dyer. So at one point I went back and I was like, let's try this guy out. And I was like, oh, the Western interpretation of Taoism is everything in my life must be aligned and I must be living in perfect congruence. My understanding of the Eastern philosophy of Taoism is that our call is to actually use the awareness of a misalignment to move towards alignment. We shouldn't expect to be aligned. We should structure our lives and our environments and our relationships towards alignment. You want a great one? If you want to make this will really elevate your marriage or your team. This is one of my favorite things I've ever been taught. Someone said it in a manager training, almost as like a slide we just clicked through. And I took that and I was like, that's gold. Reminders are compliments. You're trying to market.
Oh,
Remember, reminders are compliments. For people who are successful and high performing, that means that you're stretching your capacity and your impact. So reminders are compliments. Every time I walk out the door, Bridget says, if I don't rattle the keys, right? She's like, keys? wallet, phone. Like she's got to check, like keys, wallet, phone, because she doesn't want to lock the door and lock herself out. So I walk out and I rattle the keys the second I walk out so she can see it and it's our way. But if she says, "Do you have the keys?" I don't go, "Yes." I don't go, "Yes." Never. That never happens. I genuinely, I'm like, "Thank you, baby." Of course I did. And I rattle it and then we just go. And the reminder's a compliment. But if you think reminders are a nag, you tell me. I mean, you've been
Yeah.
married, but you work with people who are. That is like, it changes your whole life. And it comes back to that same thing. We're not expected to be aligned. In Taoism, we're called to progressively align. It's a process. And if you do that, you'll get more traction. You'll be more aligned than almost everybody else because you're honoring that journey.
Yeah, I think that I love that reminders are compliments. I can see how that could have some holes poked if you are out of integrity. If the reminder is you said you were going to do A and you haven't done A yet, and I don't have a chance to do B, then that reminder can feel like there's an agreement breach that's happened within the relationship. But if there has been regular practice of integrity and checking in or having to remake an agreement, then that reminder can be a compliment. And
Oh
I
my
love that.
gosh. I love this. Can I get you? We just throw another one out that is
Yeah, let's
life
do it.
changing.
Yes.
This one, I have this client I'm working with right now who went through a rough relationship. No, she's trying to figure out if she wants to date again. And she's trying to figure out what that looks like. And so we start
Mhm.
creating a vision and we start walking through. And there's three pieces. This is, if you want a radically happy life, but you also want to make progress, these three things, you get the right frame, it'll change everything. And you poke holes if you got them. I always want to upgrade them. I want to find the best information. Intelligence is a resource. I'm not here to have it. I'm here to access it. So I'm open. But the first thing is we started looking through and we identified the first problem. She had very, very high expectations, and expectations are about how you think the outside world's going to work. And I promise you could say, what about internal? This is important. But I'm differentiating intentions, expectations, and standards. Expectations, if you have high expectations, right? That right there, that's most people who can't enjoy dating. They have high expectations and zero intentions. It's like, it's a real problem, right? Okay. First of all, you have to have your intentions. What is your positive intent to bring in? That matters. You get credit for that in yourself. Like you nailed that first part of the puzzle. It's really cool. And thank you for everybody who comes in and they brought positive intentions. I honor that. You missed the agreement. I honor that. What was your intention? I really wanted to, but this is what happened. First of all, love the intention. Already we got a foundation for acknowledgement with the intention. This is where people mess it up, right? They set high
Mhm.
expectations about the external world, drop the expectation as low as you possibly can. And then people say, "Mark, what are you talking about?" They're like, "If I do that, then I'm just going to get walked on. I'm going to get treated poorly. I'm going to get high standards." Your expectations don't dictate the choices you make, your standards do. So your decisions come from standards, but not expectations. That means you're full for all the appreciation, but you know what the standards are. And so you're not upset or dissatisfied when someone comes and they aren't at standard yet or it's not there. You're like, okay, I appreciate what you're able to offer. This is the vision though. Do you want to go here? And I'll tell you what, I used to think that that doesn't work because if you're trying to control, you'll really struggle here. But I have zero expectations for Bridget, literally zero. I have none. It's just all day. I start stacking appreciation, positive intentions, appreciation, and we're just agreed on what our standards are and we want to go. And it is incredible how fast you move, how enjoyable it is. And if you master that framework right there, your team will love you. They will feel more appreciated from you than anybody else. You'll get more extra role behaviors, right? You'll get more they're doing work, not because they have to, because they want to. And your clients, oh my gosh, they'll grow so much faster as well.
That's a beautiful framework. I'm looking at that through the lens of parenting as well. And I'm like, yes, that is one that I can literally take from this podcast and apply myself in how we frame specifically around education because we do online schooling and how to frame those more difficult subjects, because we all have the one that we don't really like and play with that for leveling up the standards and also honoring and appreciating the intention that's going into it, but also looking at what those expectations, because I think when expectations, those can just be such a detriment to any relationship. Like, and it's hard, especially as you're raising children and as they're growing, the expectations do tend to pile up as age goes on versus I love the reframe of having to be like, what are the standards then that we're aiming for that are like rooted in values, like the family values, rather than it being like, here's external. Again, it goes back to that external expectations.
I love that because I'm really preparing for parenting. Like we have a monthly meeting where we prepare for parenting. And every time there's a child that enters our life, we start talking about, we will debrief your son walking into this. Like, and we will talk about how I felt, how I handled it. We actively talk about it. And I love it. I love this. This is actually Dan Martell when he talks about teams, principles, like standards. So it's like for me, what I never want to say as a parent, which I'm sure I will make mistakes, I'm sure I'll miss, right? But I never want to say, Daddy wants you to. Daddy needs you to. I never want to do that. Instead, what I want to say is, and I'm talking about, when they do something that's a miss, that you're trying to
Yeah.
punish, or you're really just trying to get a behavior to go away, right? You're trying to
Yeah.
see it go away. I want to say, hey, what's your intention right now? Right. So I say, what are you doing? That's my question. That's my question for the kid, probably, right? What are you doing? And it's a check in and you get them to answer. That's me teaching them to tell me what your intention is, or it reflect them to, what are you doing? Hey, remember, our value is honoring, our time or space or our what we said or our word or whatever it is. So are you honoring your word right now? No? Okay. Then what do we have to do to honor the word? And then, you're going to get the pushback. You're like, I don't want to honor the word. What does that even mean? And, I'm going to
Yeah.
need better language. But you're going to get that. But that's my favorite thing is to say, oh, okay. And then if you have to put the standard on, I'm going to have to put you here because of this, because we've all agreed this is it. And when they get older, my vision is this, that we write down everything that we did with our children and we show it to them and we say, we are sure we made mistakes, but this was our intention in each one of those moments. And if you're ever curious about why we did what we did or any rule or value we created, this is why.
Yeah.
And we're here to learn and grow. And I think that if you at least aim to do that 80, 90%, by the time they start to develop a story about who they are, which doesn't happen until adolescence for most
Mhm.
people, they're not thinking about little them. They're just really interacting with the outside world and your approval. And so when they start doing that, you build a framework so that they can start to contextualize all those things as it relates to them. And I hope, I don't know, it'll be either a huge insight or we'll realize we missed a piece, but that's where I'm at now.
Well, we'll invite you back after the kids are born and we can have an in-depth conversation again on how it's going. Mark, this has been such a pleasure. I'd love to jump into just a bit of rapid fire with you to wrap this up. You ready?
Bring it on.
Who would you trade places with to live in their body, see how they thought just for a day, anyone in history?
Marcus Aurelius.
Ooh, yeah. Who is your favorite character in a book or a movie and why? Fictional book or fictional movie?
I'm going to go with Odd from Odd Thomas. And that's because Odd has the gift of seeing what most people can't and the challenge to be able to do something about what most people can't do something with. And he has an anchor to something that is more important than him that drives him to do it. And then if you watch the movie, just watch the movie, you'll see why you understand the level of commitment he has and why it mattered when you watch the movie or read the book.
Read the
Dean
book.
Koontz, Odd Thomas.
That sounds great. That sounds like a book I've 100%. I've never, you're first person ever on the history of nearly 300 episodes to say Odd Thomas. What is your money habits?
Oh, baby. Okay. First of all, credible personal budgeting. I have a shared budget, 100% transparent and see what the ones I love. Anybody who asks me how we're going financially, it's not a big deal. I mean, it matters, but the reflecting at the scoreboard's open. All absolute transparency, which means I know every bit about my numbers personally and in business. I share them with the love of my life. There, we share our finances really from the first 3 months. We built a world to do that weekly finance meeting. We have it as a standard. We have a process and a system for checking in on our whole resources and how we actually will navigate them and what decisions we'll make. It takes very little time, 30 minutes a week, but it changes our life. And I think the biggest one financially is recognize the most important thing. If you're in business, you must figure out a way to procure sales and revenue. And so
Mm.
anything else is a massive distraction if it's getting in the way of sales and revenue, unless you literally don't have the capacity to fulfill. Then you got to build it. But if you have the capacity to fulfill, you must prioritize sales and revenue. And that's what I'm constantly working on. But I really do believe Every week, my top KPI is to continue to find the clients who really want to be served and go serve them. Get out there and find those clients. Do not assume money's going to be the same. You go out there and work as if, you know, next month could be the hardest month to ever find a client or whatever. And it probably will never be the hardest month if you do that.
Amen. What do you define to be your kingdom?
And I think at different stages of my life, I'd answer it differently. But for me, I think my kingdom it really is my presence. I think that the one thing that's so important to me, you think about like a sovereign ruler, I really think that, our community, my presence is open, it's available, it's here, and it cares about everyone. And so as I, rule that kingdom, it's a place where it's really the value to love and like every human being and to move us towards the peaks of human development and humanity development. So that where world peace becomes obvious, where when people say like, "Oh, I can't stand so and so," that's seen as bad as like punching someone in the face at a party. Like I want that to be seen as that bad. That's like literally lighting up a cigarette around children. When people say, it's like, I can't stand so and so. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. If you're upset, that's fine. But okay, that's to me, that's the equivalent of saying that to your young kid.
Yeah,
And I'm sensitive that people do. So I think that's my kingdom is my presence and my values. And that's a big one. And I'd like to grow that kingdom because I think we can share that and it'd be really good.
I love that world. I love that kingdom. What does it mean to crown yourself?
To ground myself.
To crown yourself.
Oh, to crown myself. I think when I think about crowning yourself, I think really what it is creative expression for me. The amount of crazy things I do, it's creative expression. It's like if you watch me teach a class from one, every day is going to have entertainment for a reason. Every meeting, when we have finance meeting, it's never like, okay, it's time for finance meeting. It's like some silly thing is going to happen. There is always that component. And I think crowning yourself just means like, I'm going to creatively express myself. It's not that I don't care what other people think. It's just like crowning myself is I'm going to show up and I'm going to allow myself to express myself creatively, uninhibited, unlimited, and give people truly the permission to do the same, to celebrate them as they do.
Beautiful. Mark, I could talk to you all day. Like
Mhm.
we could go on a deep dive about through many a rabbit hole. I have loved this conversation so much. It was everything I wanted and more. I know this has been on in the works for quite some time, so I'm so honored that you could make the time to be here with us. If they got half as much value out of this conversation as I did, like worlds are changed. So I'm so honored to have you here. I know you have a specific offer just for our audience, for listening, for tuning in, for staying this long, and for like diving deep. So, can you share that with us?
Yes. Okay. So first of all, by the way, if I'm going to say something crazy, and maybe you shouldn't say this on a podcast, but I'm going to say, it. If you're in business, please make your offers. Like, what in the world? I want to know what you're offering. If they actually add value, why would you ever withhold them? That has driven me crazy, right? So, just so you
Yes.
know, safe to make an offer around me for anything. I would be trying to sell me the moon. Like, I enjoy it. It's a good thing. Now, for the audience here, what I really love to do is I love to think through like what really is going to meet your audience where they're at. And I realized one of the biggest things is if we're trying to crown ourselves or we're trying to make that happen, we just got to make sure that we have unshakable self worth. That is absolutely one of the most important things that you can possibly do. So, what I've done, is I'm going to share it with you guys here, but just a link to a special webpage and a little video for you. I have a special message for everybody who listens to this podcast, who's here, who just wants to be there. It's like 2.5, 3 minutes. It's a special message for you. And I'm giving you two free opportunities. One is a free course I actually built. I was called to build it for higher level military officers who needed to figure out a way to actually overcome the ego so that they can make better decisions. And so it's all about how to get out of the preoccupation of self worth and be able to fully and freely accept yourself and share that with other people. It's out of yourself and into your life. And so that's there, giving that away to everybody who's on here for free. And then also, I have a really cool self awareness tool, a scorecard for you to check. And it's your whole leadership, how you're showing up in every area of your life. I'd recommend if you already feel like I've got a good handle of self worth, go through that whole scorecard. You get a personalized report. It was thoughtful. It wasn't just like AI typed it out and did it. I spent months building that report and we're always refining it. And you can check it out there. And as always, connect with me. It's at Face My Fear on Facebook. and Instagram. And that's because I believe just the way you lead is you face whatever we're afraid of. So you go towards it. So at Face My Fear, you can find me, Dr. Mark Matthews, on LinkedIn, and come share space with me. Let's transform this world and bring the peace table to life.
Amen. I am blown away by this offer. Like, seriously, just click the link down below. It's in the comments. Connect with Dr. Mark. He is so generous to be able to give this to us. I am in awe of all that you are creating, and I am honored to sit at that peace table with you. As always, my fellow sovereigns, own your throne, mind your business, because your reign is now.